They mocked her uniform before they even knew her name. It was the kind of laughter that comes not from humor, but from ignorance, the snide smirks of those who judge before they understand. The woman stood there, silent, her old army medic uniform pressed and spotless, the patches faded but carefully stitched. The cafeteria was filled with chatter and the clinking of trays, but all she heard were the whispers. Look at her, trying too hard. Who wears that old thing anyway? They didn't know the story behind that uniform, or the lives saved under its sleeves. They didn't know that the woman wearing it had once crawled through fire and chaos just to pull someone's son out of the wreckage. If you love your mom and dad, hit that subscribe button and show some love to her, because what you're about to hear will make you look at every uniform with new eyes. Her name was Emily Carter, though most people just called her Document. She wasn't a high-ranking officer anymore. She'd left active service years ago after her final tour in Afghanistan. These days she volunteered at a small veteran support center in Virginia, helping the wounded, the forgotten, and those trying to piece their lives back together. Her uniform wasn't vanity, it was a symbol. She wore it every Memorial Day, every Veterans Week, and sometimes, like today, when she was asked to speak at a local high school assembly about courage, duty, and kindness. But she never boasted. Emily was quiet, humble to a fault, the kind of woman who'd rather clean the floors than take credit for saving lives. Yet that day, when a few young recruits from the nearby training base stopped at the center for lunch, they didn't see a hero, they saw someone they thought was pretending to matter. One of them, a tall recruit named Davis, laughed under his breath and muttered, "That patch is ancient, probably from a thrift store." The others chuckled, except one, a quiet trainee named Lopez who just watched. Emily looked up from her tray and met their eyes briefly. She smiled softly. "It's not from a thrift store," she said gently. "It's from a field hospital outside Kandahar." The cafeteria fell silent for a second, but then Davis just shrugged, "Sure, lady." The mockery stung, but Emily didn't fight back. She'd seen worse than arrogance, she'd seen fear, and pain, and loss. So she stood up, tossed her napkin away, and left with grace, the kind only those who have truly lived in the shadow of danger can carry. Later that day, the recruits were told they'd be attending a joint event at the same veteran center, a training exchange where they'd hear first-hand stories from combat medics. When they entered the small hall, the same woman stood at the front. Emily Carter. The lady with the thrift store patch. The recruits shifted awkwardly as the commander introduced her. "This woman," he said, "was awarded the Silver Star for saving 12 soldiers under heavy fire. The patch you see on her uniform? That's the insignia of the 141st Combat Medical Unit, one of the most decorated in recent history." The room went still. Emily didn't look at the recruits, she looked at the American flag behind them and began to speak. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. She told them about nights lit by tracer fire, about carrying wounded men through rivers of dust and fear, about holding the hand of a 19-year-old private who begged her to tell his mother he was brave. She told them about the smell of diesel and blood, about patching up friends she knew might not make it. And through it all, she kept her composure. But when she spoke of the day her convoy was ambushed, and she crawled through burning metal to save her commander, the same man who later nominated her for the Silver Star, her voice cracked for just a second. She pointed to her sleeve. "This patch," she said quietly, "isn't just fabric. It's a promise. That no one under my watch would be left behind." The recruits were silent. Even Davis lowered his eyes, shame written all over his face. But what none of them knew yet was that her story wasn't finished. Because sitting quietly in the back of the room that day, dressed in full uniform, was an elderly man with silver hair and 4 stars on his shoulder, General Raymond Whitaker, one of the most respected figures in the U.S. Army. Emily hadn't seen him in years. He waited until she finished, then stood up slowly, walked forward, and everyone in the room straightened. When he stopped in front of her, he didn't salute. He knelt. The recruits gasped. The general's voice trembled as he said, "You carried me out of hell when everyone else thought I was gone. You saved my life." It's an honor to stand, or kneel, before you. The room filled with stunned silence, then quiet applause that swelled like a wave of respect. The same young recruits who had laughed that morning now stood at attention, eyes wet, chests heavy with realization. Emily blinked back tears and whispered, "Sir, please, you don't kneel to me." But the general shook his head. "This patch deserves more honor than any medal I've ever worn." The story spread quickly through the base, then through the town, and before long, through social media. People learned who Emily Carter was, not just a veteran, but a living symbol of sacrifice and compassion. She began receiving letters from across the country, from mothers thanking her for saving sons, from soldiers she never met who were inspired by her strength, from children who drew her in crayon next to the flag. Months later, when she was invited to speak at the Pentagon for Veterans Day, she stood in the same uniform, same patch, and this time, no one laughed. Cameras flashed, but Emily didn't pose. She simply said, "There are heroes who come home, and there are heroes who don't. The ones who don't, they're the reason I still wear this uniform. So that when you see it, you remember them." The applause that followed wasn't the polite kind, it was raw, heartfelt, thunderous. Even the president, seated among the generals, rose to his feet. But Emily didn't let fame change her. She returned to her small veteran center in Virginia, where she still volunteered every week, still helped the forgotten, still wore that old uniform when the stories needed to be told. Sometimes the young recruits from the day would visit her, bringing flowers or just sitting quietly to listen. Davis, the one who had mocked her, joined the medical corps after graduation. On the day he received his own patch, he sent her a photo with a note that said, "For every soldier you saved, we carry your promise forward." Emily cried for the first time in years. One cold November morning, Emily placed her uniform neatly on the chair beside her bed and looked out at the dawn. The patch, frayed but proud, caught the light one last time as she whispered, "Mission complete." She passed away peacefully that day, her heart finally at rest. The funeral was small but dignified, and when they lowered her flag-draped coffin, the same general who had once knelt before her stood at attention and saluted, tears tracing the lines on his weathered face. Later, as the honor guard folded the flag and handed it to a young cadet, the general said softly, "Remember this name, Emily Carter. She taught us what service really means." The story of the woman they mocked became a legend in military halls. Her patch was framed in the Veterans Museum in Washington, beneath a plaque that read, "She wore it for them all." And every time a new recruit walked past it, they paused just a little longer, standing a bit straighter, understanding that humility and courage often wear the same face. So the next time you see someone in uniform, old, worn, or new, remember Emily Carter, the medic who never asked for respect but earned it in ways words could never capture. Now tell me, from which part of the country are you watching this story today?